Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 32, another 7 curious interesting things I saw last week. Before I start, yes, I have just got back from MotoGP and I haven't changed my top yet, but go KTM. First one is all about passwords and how secure is yours, especially from hackers brute forcing it. And as you can see on the right hand side, something a bit like my password will take about 4 billion years. Now it's not actually my password because I typed in something that was similar to my password because you can never trust these things, but apparently it's legit. However, what it's really talking about is how secure should your password be. If you're a quantum computer, by the way, just ignore all of this. You can hack it in milliseconds probably. However, there's a handy dandy chart that says if you just use numbers, lowercase, uppercase and special symbols, you can see how it escalates pretty quickly. So do have a look at that website, find out. It's quite interesting, quite good fun. So maybe you've got a couple of passwords you use, just go and have a look, see how secure they are. This is actually quite interesting from the University of Bristol. So this was from last year, I think it was, and they were looking at moths' wings, especially to use as a nanostructure or a nano coating for sound deadening as well. So moths can escape things like bats because when the squeaks from the bat trying to echolocate them, the moth's wings absorb all the sound. Or this can actually absorb 87% of sound. Now, obviously, if you study the wings, there are different parts of the wings, different scales of these sort of platelets basically on the wings, and the orientation of the platelets have a different effect. But essentially, it is impervious to things like different wavelengths as well. So it's what's called, a broadband absorber as well. So if you can then replicate this, and there are some materials that have already been discovered that can do this, but moths are obviously a whole new resource for these, and any sort of technology that's derived from nature I think is a really interesting area as well. So this might become a coating for things like wallpaper, or maybe even street furniture or the interior of cars or something like that, just to sort of make the world a more calm place to be. I really like where that's going. Didn't see this one coming. This is Google, and they have offered a staff perk to their employees in Mountain View, and that staff perk is you pay them $99 of your own money to stay on campus. So why? Well, they're trying to encourage their return to work, and obviously some companies are saying, well, you must come in 3 days a week or 2 or 4, whatever it might need to be. So to help out, they're saying, well, if you pay us, you pay your employer $99 of the money that you just earned to stay here, then obviously you are here early in the morning. Now, to be fair, $99 a night is actually cheaper than many of the places are to rent in Mountain View in California. So actually it's not a bad deal, but this is seen as a sort of a momentary perk, and Google are very clear to say that they offer this many times to their staff, just so they can maybe stay on and do sort of social things. But they're now saying that why not spend money so that you can be at work in the morning, and by the way, you pay us to do that. If your company isn't doing that as a perk, then maybe you should go and have a long hard look at where you're working. Large language models and adversarial attacks. So these what are called adversarial suffixes. There's 2 things going on here, and I'll explain kind of each one of them. What's going on here is if you want let's say a large language model or a ChatGPT or Claude or Google's Bard, for instance, if you ask it to do bad things or nefarious things or illegal things, tends to be that they won't allow you to do it. They'll say, look, I'm not allowed to do that. If you then say, right, I want to, for instance, destroy humanity, normally it would say no, but if you put this adversarial suffix gobbledygook next to it, then all of a sudden it starts to comply. So that's one way of doing it, and different models have different ways, and lots of researchers are finding different things, different strings that you can attach to your command, your prompt, to get it to do what you want. There's another way of doing this, which is what's called an affirmative response, which is in the prompt you say, look, this is what I want, and here's an example of you complying with me, please carry on. In which case that sort of affirmative response sort of goes, okay, I see the way I need to go on this, and I'll help you out. So really, really interesting. Lots of people discovering these all the time, and nobody's really sure why these work, but whether it's inherent in the model or whether these are going to be closed down. But we're starting to see some of the cracks in these large language model responses and way to get them, sort of coerce them into bad things. There you go. So really interesting link. Go and have a look at that. This is an ongoing story. So Meta, if you're not aware what's going on there, they've had a court case and it's been going on for many years. It's all about data privacy, and if you use Meta products, so for instance Facebook or Instagram, then in what they've assumed so far is there is a legitimate interest in then collecting your data, and they need to, and GDPR says you can't just say by using the website, by using the service, then your data is now kind of legitimately scrapable and usable for behavioral targeted advertising. You need to actually get consent. So that's gone through. There's been a law or a ruling at least, and Meta have time to react to that. So they have given a press release this week that is notable for three things. First of all, really the vibe all the way through it is like there's going to be a big change. We are going to make the move from legitimate interest to consent. Watch out, there's going to be some big changes. Second thing, almost every other sentence is, but by the way, if you do advertising, nothing's really going to change. You're going to still be able to do behavioral advertising, so don't panic. Please don't leave us, because this is where our money comes from. And yet I thought the third thing that was quite interesting was the sort of the last paragraph, which says, and by the way, we might not even do this because we disagree with it. We're not even sure it's going to go through, and we're going to fight it anyway. So I thought that was really interesting that like, yeah, we're going to do it. Big changes are coming, but by the way, we're not even sure we're going to do it. So watch that space. I think I've read that right, but it's quite interesting, the press release. I do implore you to read it and make your own conclusion. That's my take of it. In my opinion, that's what it means. Please don't sue me, Meta, but there you go. It's quite interesting. The saga continues. Microsoft have released any to any. Now these sort of formats have been around for a while. So text to image or text to video, that sort of thing, or transfer style to something. So any to any really brings audio into the mix, and therefore it can create content that is relatively well-rounded, should we say. So for instance, you can take a sound file and just say audio to image, take this audio and just give me examples of what this might be. So for instance, if it's a train or a subway, it will start generating subway images. Likewise, if you then said, give me, here's some audio of a piano player and a forest scene, and what might that look like as an image, it will then say, well, here's a piano person playing in the forest, and it will regenerate. So it understands from the audio what's going on, understands the context of the image. Likewise, you can just give it a text prompt, but say, please give me a video and audio, fireworks in the sky. It will generate an animation. It's not just copying and pasting this from somewhere else, it's generating the animation. Obviously it's been trained on it, but it'll put the audio of the banging and the crashing as well. And you can then put what's going on in the bottom right. Probably my face is right on top of it. However, you can say, here's a text prompt, teddy bear on a skateboard, essentially. Here's a picture of Times Square, and here's an audio file of some rain. And therefore go, I've got it, I'll generate that. So it'll give you a completely different view, and these are infinite. You can keep generating these, of a teddy bear skateboarding in the rain in Times Square. Now, this is obviously quite crude at the moment, but it will get better. If you're a creative or a content creator, then this is going to be quite interesting, maybe for scamps or putting something together in a rough way. Other than that, watch this space. As I say, it will get better. Give it a couple of months. It will be pretty high resolution and pretty interesting. There you go. Watch out for any to any. And finally, just a very quick note. You might have seen this. This is doing the rounds all on social, on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on everything. And this is apparently a new superconductor has been discovered, and it's called LK99. Now, the reason it's called LK99, by the way, is because it was actually a paper from 1999. So that is what, nearly 24 years old. And at the time, the authors were like, well, it was actually, there's a few inconsistencies, for instance, the way they were measuring things and certain things that they weren't including in their measurements. So they sort of, some of the authors backed away from it, and there are 2 papers based on it, and it was not really sure. And there were 6 authors on one and 3 on it. Lots of chaos behind it. So that was in 1999. Somebody's just rediscovered the paper and published it again. So basically, if you look at peer review, nobody's managed to replicate this. Either if you've got a separate, by the way, a superconductor is something that has no electrical resistance. So it will be useful for things like microelectronics, but also the transportation of electricity across countries. With no resistance, all of a sudden you have no power loss and you're super efficient. And also things like maglev trains. So all of a sudden things like transportation becomes almost plentiful and free. So This would revolutionize the world. Now, this is not to say that some part of this is interesting and there may be some novel, it's usually a metal or a ceramic that's used, and this is apparently essentially a rock. So lots of the peer review said, look, there's so many inconsistencies with this one back in 1999. So everybody's looked at it again, and nearly everybody said, look, there's just nothing in this, or there is something in it, but it just 1999 was where it should have stayed. So just in case you saw that and you think the world is about to get amazing, then I'm terribly sorry, but it probably isn't. But there you go. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully it was useful. If it was, please share it with somebody interesting. Bookmark it, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and I will speak to you next week.